So recently we went through a deep freeze out here in Oregon, and my theory is brake fluid's hydrophobic, which means it attracts water
Hygroscopic.
and you can get water into your system. And this truck, where it came from, was North Carolina and moved out here to Oregon. I think this is the first time it has been in a extreme freeze.
Except for when it was in Sweden.
Fluid, which you can see here, is awfully dirty, expanded in the cylinders and has ruptured almost all the front seals. The seals actually look relatively pliable and are nice, but it's putting brake fluid all the way out. All this brown is drips of brake fluid across the pads. Luckily, I had a cylinder rebuild kit and new pads because it was a project I was going to be doing in the future, but it looks like we're going to be getting to it sooner than later. These pads actually have a little bit more life in them. I don't know. Hot rodders and vintage vehicle owners will take these pads and soak them in some kind of thick solvent, which could be gasoline, and they've tried to clean pads, but pads have a tendency to absorb oils, and it's not a good idea to be using them if they've been soaked or compromised. If you need to get by in a pinch, you're not going to be able to get pads. It's possible to fill up a 5-gallon bucket, about a quart full of gasoline, soak these for the night, take them out, scrub them with some kind of brush, and then put them back together and use them that way. But I have new pads. I'm going to do that. And we're going to do a complete brake job on this Volvo C303. So we're going to get the shoes off. Tool I like to use is a crescent wrench. You go to the longest pad and kind of pry it up. You can pry and it'll come out of the slot, and then kind of push it over with the screwdriver. And that gets it away. You can pry the rest over with the screwdriver, and you'll feel the springs tighten up, and it'll start to give you more leeway when you go to get the springs off. Now we'll move to the other side, and I like to take them off. A little helicopter background. I like to take them off the side opposing the plunger. I'm going to be rebuilding these cylinders, so it doesn't matter if I get these messed up, but it's just kind of a good practice to be working on this end. That, and I'll bring you over here. There's kind of a little bit more meat here in order to grab with that crescent wrench. Side 2, we're gonna, about yay big, put it over the ears, force it down, then put this to the inside here. So down, punch yourself in the foot, down, and over. And you can see how it's come out of the slot. And then you can just kind of pry a little bit more and get it the rest of the way. This is releasing those springs. Now we can come over, we can grab the upper, and because you would be more careful with this process if you were either saving the pads or not rebuilding the cylinders. You can do this with retaining your old cylinders. Just be careful you don't tear any of the rubber. In my case, those are getting rebuilt, so I'm not going to be as careful. Very easy. Bring it over the other side. And now everything's loosey-goosey. Okay. Then we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to pop it down and see if we can get our first spring off. Once you get one of the longer springs off, so there's two colored springs in the C303 brake setup for the front. There's a black one, there's two black ones, two red ones. I'll give a close-up picture of how I'll rebuild it on the ground and show you where they all go. But there's really only one black one you need to get loose. After that, everything kind of goes limp and you can take it all apart by hand and it's much less fussy. This first one though, sometimes is super easy and other times not so much. There we go. First one off. Okay, first one came off. And you can kind of see, using the crescent wrench, you can see you can mess up the pads. When I put my new ones on, I'll be more careful. But you can see that this came down after we took off that first spring. Here's your two springs. Here is a black one, and here's the red one, which already came off. And all we need to do is get this one off. There it is. So everything just kind of falls apart at this point. Not too shabby. And I'll set it up here on the ground and show you the orientation of the springs. Here is your spring orientation. This is the top shoe, bottom shoe. This is what I meant by the black spring and red spring. Each side, black spring, red spring. A good rule of thumb is black spring, second hole in. So one hole here, two hole here, that's where the black spring goes. One hole here, two holes here, this is where the black spring goes. Same over here, it's just a mirror image on this side. One hole, two hole is where the black spring goes. One hole, two hole where the black spring goes. The red springs, and you'll see this when yours come apart, have the kind of weird way that springs hook on. It's hard to explain and it's weird how they do it, but you'll figure it out. And that, the other end attaches inside the drum to this guy right here, this little stud, and it has a little groove. It looks like something hangs on it. And of course there's one on the other side, a little farther down, down here. So doesn't want to focus on it, but it's there, I assure you. That's the orientation. This is all facing as if you were looking at it. So all the springs attach on the back side, on the vehicle side of the shoes, if that makes sense. So you're working with everything behind the shoes, as it were, from where you're working. If you're working in a driveway, if you're working in a lift, then God bless you, that's fantastic. I'm working in my driveway. And so I do everything where I'm looking at it from the outside in towards the vehicle. And cleanliness next to godliness. I always like using a little bit of brake cleaner, and I just use a little brush. I'm sure some of your vehicles are dirtier than this, but I get back there and just kind of scrub around and kind of break it up, and then I'll spray it once again with the brake cleaner And the pressure of the brake cleaner usually gets it pretty clean, and wipe it down with a rag. Especially if you're dealing with something where you've had a leak, where you're getting oil back here, it's good to get all that cleaned up. All right, we're all clean and tidy. That's as clean as I'm gonna get it. We're gonna start on the rebuilding process of the cylinders. This cylinder is what I'm gonna start with, and you can follow the line behind it to the adjacent soft line and pinch it off. I just use fuel line on a pair of vice grips and give it a good pinch, and that's gonna cut off our brake fluid supply, and we won't make a mess. All right, first thing you're gonna do, you don't have to, it's just gonna be harder for you to pull out your cylinder. You want to loosen up your bleed screw, which is back here. Loosen that to about finger tight. And that is a 7/16 for that one. And then you can just kind of pull. For some reason, these plungers have kind of sharp edges, so careful on that. You might have to get a pair of pliers and have something on the ground to catch the fluid. I find a birthday cake from Costco is just the right size of a container. Oh, stuck. All right, we're coming. There it is. So I already did the brakes on my other side. And if you notice how gross the brake fluid is here, I think when I changed my soft lines, I didn't flush out my system completely. And so that old brake fluid, hydrophobic, allowed water into the system. When water expands and you're talking about seals, you're gonna get failure points. So here's my here's what I meant by my cake container. Perfect. Not in my way. Nice and small. So these are a really simple kind of setup. You got a spring can come off. Then you have two seals. This is essentially just a dust boot. It keeps the contaminants from getting in close to the plunger. This is the main portion of it, this one seal here, and that's what fails and what causes brake fluid leaks and poor braking and no braking. So here in the States, actually I guess it'd be anywhere, but here's your part number, which appears to be coming through backwards, 18041183. Wheel cylinder repair kit 600210. I bought these at Atlantic British because these are the front brake. This is a front brake rebuild kit for a Land Rover 109, and the difference between a Land Rover and a C303, as far as I understand it, is they have a dual plunger system in the front, so you have plungers on either side, but they end up sending you 4 in one package. I ended up buying 2 packages thinking I'd need it, but one package will do your entire front brakes because you only need one set per each side, one dust boot, one seal. All right, so now we come to the cylinder itself. And the biggest issue with these, mine, you know, I think they were even rebuilt not that long ago. So most of the components are pretty nice. I'm fortunate in that I'm working with newer stuff. Some of you guys are going to have really crusty cylinders. And the one on the other side, you can look inside. This one, you can only feel. And there's a tool you can get called a brake cylinder hone. And it looks like a hone you would use to clean cylinders on an engine. You put it on your drill, and it has abrasive pads on the end. You shove it in here, you turn it on for a little bit, you come in and out, and it gives you a nice clean and uniform end result. Well, I didn't want to buy one of those, and mine are, like I said, mine are well off. So I'm not dealing with pitting, or that I've noticed, pitting or rust that some of these are known to get. And so I make a lot of my own tools, but this is a PVC pipe with a flag of very fine sandpaper on it, and you wrap it around, and in that direction you put it up in the hone, and you create your own hone like this. Put it up in the hone, put it up in the cylinder, and just kind of run it around and clean it out. Okay. Again, this would not work if you had any kind of serious abrasion in there. You'd have to go at it a bit more. I do that. I goose it with some brake clean. Make sure my tray's underneath. I use my shop towel. I clean out any of those fine particles left by my sandpaper. Okay. I give it the nail test. I see if I'm finding, you drag your nail on the wall. You see if you find any grooves. If you do, you have to do something more severe in order to hone out that cylinder, because any kind of imperfection in the wall, the seal on the plunger can't compensate for that, and you'll get leaks. So then you take your plunger, make sure not to forget this little spring that came on the end. Put the spring on the end. There's your finished unit. Put it up in there. And what you want to be mindful of is that those sides don't roll back on themselves, because that'll cause a leak. And remember, we loosened our breather over here, so you shouldn't be plunging anything except for air back in. If you hadn't done your bleeder, you're going to put this in there, and it's going to be pushing against a pocket of air, and it's going to be really hard to push in. So now you push this in, you take your ends, and you start folding it over. And bada boom, bada bing, your cylinder is rebuilt. This little groove here needs to be perpendicular to the sides so that
or
it
parallel.
accepts
Parallel will work too.
brake shoe.